You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Hey, glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your host, Keith Wheeler.
And Nuria Corby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today we're going to talk about writing a nonfiction book. And you and me both have written, well, in my case, a book, just one so far, apart from children's books. But you are quite prolific in writing nonfiction, as far as I know. I think you have a few books out.
Yeah, I've got a couple. Right now I have two nonfiction books under my own name. And it's something that I enjoy doing. I really like the structure of nonfiction books. I'm an educator at heart. I've got the YouTube channel. I've taught Sunday school, so I do have that teacher mentality, and so it just felt right to write nonfiction books. I'm able to take the knowledge that I have on whatever topic it may be, and come up with a structure and able to educate someone in their own home, wherever they want to consume it. And it just makes me feel good. And there are a lot of misconceptions, I think, when it comes to nonfiction, to writing nonfiction books.
That's very true. But one question I wanted to ask you is, how did you get started? How did you suddenly decide, I'm going to write a nonfiction book? Because I think we all kind of think, oh yeah, one day in my life I will write a book, but it doesn't actually happen to many people, and we've both created one for different reasons. So I was wondering what your story was.
I think the best way that many people can probably relate to is when I was getting the same types of questions about a particular topic. I have friends that I graduated with, and one lady in particular, she has a yoga company. I don't even call it a yoga store. I don't know what you call them, but anyway, and studio. She has a yoga studio, and so I told her that she should write a nonfiction book, and she said, I don't even know where to start. And I said, well, I'm sure there's at least 10 questions that you get on a regular basis. And even if you don't, if you can't come up with 10 questions that people are asking you, then maybe what are 10 things that you wish other people knew about whatever your topic is? Those are usually the two easiest ways that I've found to come up with content, is either 10 or 20 questions that you get all the time, or 10 or 20 things you wish people knew. And because of that, it's so much easier to structure your book, because whatever those items are you came up with, the 10 or 20, those are your chapters. Like that, literally that simple, and then you just come up with, under each one, how do you what do you want to tell them about that? Those are your paragraphs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think my story was a little bit similar. I think when I was younger, I always thought I wanted to write a book, but I always thought I wanted to write a fiction book, like a novel or the story of somebody. And I did a creative writing course as well. I think I've got it somewhere here, big fat folder with all the exercises I had to do. Yeah. And I really enjoyed it, but then the kids came along and you just don't find the time. And I think the next thing was when I started my blogging. It's what you just said, you have your topic, and then the typical thing that bloggers do, 10 ways to make money online, or 7, the listicle blogs.
Right, exactly.
And it's exactly what you just said, you get the 10 things, and those are your chapters, and then you just fill them in. And it also coincided with me doing Amazon KDP. So by uploading low content books, I thought, wow, once you get used to it, it's quite easy when you think about it, as opposed to before, when I didn't know anything about it. I wouldn't have had a clue how to get a book published. I always thought you needed an agent, and you need a
Right.
publisher to contact you and to pick you out of
Right.
so many more talented people. And I thought that was impossible. And then when I did the low content book, I thought, wow, this must work on other types of books as well. And that's the story. That's how I started. Then, of course, by doing the YouTube channel and having been a former teacher, it was natural for me to then come up with the topic, which, I've found last year in particular, branding my books was a success for me. So
Yeah.
I thought, there's my topic, the things that you would need to do to brand your book. So that's how my book came about. And now I've got the bug, and I really want to write more
Yeah.
because it was fun. It's really fun. I don't find it tedious at all. I found the formatting a little bit more tedious, but and again, it was a challenge, so I enjoyed that as
Right.
well. And I think, yeah, it's not as difficult as people might think, or it could be, depending on the kind of person that you are,
Right.
I think.
And the content that you're creating,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
but one of the I before I wrote my first nonfiction book, I'd written multiple fiction books,
Yeah,
children's books, young adult novels and things like that. But and I'll tell you, I have found that nonfiction books are the easiest for me to write.
for me too.
Because
Yeah,
you have the knowledge and it just flows right out. It. I mean, you can. I've seen people dictate on their phone an entire nonfiction book, and then you can have that transcribed, and then you just have to do the editing at that point,
yeah,
changing it from conversational to, a little bit more professional looking. But you've got the rough draft, as we would call it in school. You've already got that done, and you did it just on your phone.
yeah.
But there are, I mean, and there are so many different misconceptions, I think, when it comes to nonfiction books. One of the biggest ones is you have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert. You have to know more than somebody else.
That's it.
If you've been doing something for a month, you just need to know more than someone who's just now starting out.
Yeah,
Now, obviously, if you've been doing something for a month, you're not going to write an advanced,
mm,
book, but you're going to write something for beginners,
that's
you know?
right. Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is that, you have to, you have to be doing something for years and be a professional at it to be knowledgeable enough to write a nonfiction book. And that's just in so many ways not true.
That's correct, because I think, and this is why I keep saying to people, when they ask me what kind of book should I create, what niches would you recommend, and I always say to people, make a book in something that and
Right.
this is when I talk about low content, but it's absolutely the same for nonfiction. You wouldn't write a nonfiction book about a subject that you don't know anything about, because yes, you can research the subject, but
Right.
there are, where is your research coming from? Obviously from books that are already out there, and you're not adding anything special to it.
Right.
Whereas if you're writing from experience, or from a viewpoint, a different angle, or anything like that, from your own perspective, I think that is the best way to do it. And like you said, you don't need to be an expert. You're just putting your expertise and your experience, how you perceived it all, into that book. And that might then help somebody who has the same perspective as you, or feels the same. I mean, it's all about connecting with readers, and there will be readers that you never connect with because they're just
Right.
not of your frame of mind, or they're not of your type, or then they think
Right.
differently. But if you connect with like-minded people, then obviously you can still have a successful book. And if you are informing people of something, or teaching people something, then there's even more success in
Right.
that. But it could just be, I mean, we're coming to fiction maybe, but it's still non-fiction if it's your experience, even if you're just telling a story. So
Hmm.
that way you could, I'm just trying to think of ways that people could create their own book as long as it's nonfiction.
Right.
It's a lot simpler than writing a novel or crime thriller or anything like
Right.
that.
Right.
So
And one thing that you'd said is, if you can find people who are like-minded,
yeah,
and they can learn from you. But also, even if people don't think the way you do, and I think this is one of the biggest problems just in this day and age that we live in,
yes,
is that so many times that people, kind of go towards the people that are like-minded with them,
yeah,
but then you're only having one view on things,
yes,
and the same thing comes with a book. If somebody who doesn't think like I do might read my book and be like, I didn't even think of that. That's so much easier than what I'm doing, you know?
yeah,
And I'll tell you, the way my nonfiction books are not for everybody. My nonfiction books are very conversational. They're me. They're my personality in a book. And so, my intros, for example, typically start out with, if you know anything about me, you know that I don't like intros. And
mm,
so and I'll say things like, all right, let's get through this intro crap and I'll move on.
mm,
And so little comedy like that I throw in my nonfiction books, because that's my personality.
yeah,
And that's the thing, when you're creating a nonfiction book, you really want to try to put your personality in there,
yeah,
because that's how you get repeat customers, because people are going to fall in love with, I mean, the content that you write is pretty structured. They
mm,
can they can get that same structure in a YouTube video. They can
mm,
get that same structure in another book. But what makes your book stand out is what you bring to it, your personality that you put into the book, you
that's
know.
right.
And obviously it's easier to show your personality in a video than in a book, but you can still do that.
Oh, yes, I think you can. I think that's why writing is so fascinating, because a good writer can express things in words that even a picture couldn't express.
Right.
It's just to me that is the one. I mean, absolutely right what you just said. Put your personality into your book, because that's what's connecting then to the reader. I think that is so important, because a lot of people they probably think that writing nonfiction books has to be very factual, very
Right.
straight to the point, no embellishments. And I think that by adding embellishments, by adding humor, by adding um, relatable things to your book, that makes it more interesting, I think.
Yep.
I tried to do that with my branding book, because I thought branding is such a dry subject when you just approach it from a technical point of view. So
Right.
I tried to sort of put in my own experience as a beginner into it as well, and what I learned and the mistakes I made. That's another one. You could make a book of all the mistakes you've made in
Right.
life, and it would be a nonfiction book that you can
Yeah.
create, and probably find people that very interested in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another, I don't want to say misconception, but another thought that many people have approached me have is that I'm not, I don't have anything to write about. I don't have a topic.
Yeah.
And, they think that it has to be something crazy or something, that no one else has written about.
Mm.
You can write a book. Chances are you're going to write one that already exists, but
Yes.
it doesn't exist from you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with writing a fiction book.
Mm.
It's what you bring to it that makes it different.
Yeah.
Not everybody, and it could be something as simple as, and I've seen these on Amazon, is, it could be a book on how to delete uh, books from my Kindle library.
Yeah.
I've seen that. You
Yeah.
know, it's going to be a short read because it's
Yeah.
not too complex.
Mm.
But literally something as simple as that
Mm.
is something that is on Amazon, and I've there's actually multiple books that
Mm.
show that. But anything, how to change a
Mm.
light bulb, how to change a tire, how to,
Yeah.
what I mean, beginning uh, things to do in your car on a monthly basis, whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And again, they don't have to be super lengthy.
Mm.
On Amazon, in an ebook format, you can have a book as little as one page. They're
Mm.
called Kindle, or Amazon calls them Kindle short reads.
Mhm.
And so anything from one page to 100 pages digitally
Yeah.
it will qualify as a short read. So it doesn't have to be super lengthy. Now, to get a paper version of it, then it has to be, I think in KDP, I think it's 24 pages.
24 pages. Yeah.
Other platforms like Lulu, you can get it for I think it's 10 pages because they do pamphlets.
Mm-hmm.
The binding is different, but yeah, but I mean, as far as an ebook version of your book,
Yeah.
again, it doesn't have to be lengthy. And I'm not saying that to say just throw out hot garbage that's only a page long just to get
Yeah.
a nonfiction book written. But I'm saying it breaks my heart when people don't do something because of these self-inflicted limitations. These
Absolutely.
either they've been told by someone else that
Yeah.
this is the case, or they just think that way.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that are limiting their abilities and their potential for getting a book out there
Yeah.
because of assumptions that they've made
Yeah.
or rumors that they've heard, and they're just not true. Like you can create a book. Again, you don't have to be a pro at it. You just have to have knowledge of it. I mean, obviously you don't put something up there that you don't have any knowledge of just to create a book. But I mean, I've seen people who create good quality books even on something that they might not have any knowledge of to begin with, but they've done the research.
Yes.
They've watched YouTube videos. You know, then they've done it, because you can watch, believe it or not everything on the internet is true. And so, if you watch YouTube videos on how to do X, Y, and Z, try to do it yourself, because maybe
Exactly.
you can find maybe it wasn't true. Maybe you can find an easier way to do it. And again, that's what you would put inside your nonfiction book.
That's right. And that way you can add more to it because you can say, well, my experience of that was so
Right.
and so. And then, I mean, the other day I was looking something up on Google, and you type something in, and straight away you could see somebody else has already typed this in. I'm not the only
Right.
one that's
Right.
asking this. And then you had a whole lot of related questions to that topic. And I thought,
Hmm.
wow, someone could make that into a book. And those are your chapters as well. So
Yeah.
information is out there, it's everywhere. But by adding your own experience of that information, that makes it your book then, and not just some generic answer. But yeah, that's a I think like what you said earlier, that people kind of limit themselves because they think I can't do this, or no, there are people that are experts out there and I'm not an expert. Those are the kind of things that used to hold me back as well, and I
Right.
totally identify with that. And it's only when I started publishing low content books that I realized that I could have done this years ago and I just
Yeah.
didn't know. I just didn't know how. And now I'm quite willing almost to push the boundaries and see what else can I do now? What else can I
Yeah.
produce?
What else
That I've,
can't I do?
I know. So
What else can't I do? Yeah.
that's the best thing about it. It
Yeah.
does give you a lot of confidence.
It
Maybe
does.
maybe that doesn't lead, it could backfire at some point, but so far so good. So I
Yeah.
think that you need to just risk it sometimes and go for it.
Well, I mean, and what do you really have to lose? I mean,
Exactly.
the time you put into creating it, make, $20 to get a good book cover done.
Mhm.
That's really it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really all I mean, and then if you're gonna, hire an editor,
Mm.
whatever, and we can have a whole nother episode on that. But
Yeah.
you're really not out a lot. You're out more time probably than anything else. But look at the possibilities. You know, maybe it won't sell, but maybe it will. And you really don't know until you do it.
Well,
And another thing that people say is, well, why would anybody listen to me? I don't have a following. Keith, you've got a YouTube channel. Of course they're going to listen to you. You know, Nuri, you've got a, YouTube channel. Of course they're going to listen to you. But what first you have to ask yourself why you're doing it. Are you
yeah.
doing it to make money? Are you doing it to, to get sales? If you are, then it's going to be more about the topic than about you. You
Mm.
know, People are searching on Amazon and Google and everything else to solve a problem. That's what nonfiction books are for. They're to solve a problem. And so if your book solves a problem,
Mm.
they don't care who you are. They're looking at the title. They're looking at, the book description. Is this something that's going to help me out?
Yeah.
They're not looking at, oh, I don't know this person, so I'm not going to buy it. No, is this book going to help me? And so, you might want to, if your goal is to make money, then I would say that, maybe do some niche research and see, because I guarantee you that everybody has multiple areas that they could write a nonfiction book in. They
Absolutely.
may not realize it. That's probably the biggest hindrance is
Yes.
not realizing it. But just look at your everyday life. Look at what you do every day. Look what you do every week, every month, maybe every year. It's something that you do consistently, whether it's a job, a hobby, just something that you do, maybe something, just a medial task that you don't like doing. Well, guess what? If you don't like doing it, most people probably don't like doing it either. And so that's something that you can maybe give them shortcuts on how to do and things like that. And then you can do niche research, which we've covered in other videos, and see which of those topics there's the smallest audience or smallest competition and biggest audience in. Most people are consuming based on the average BSRs, and then that'll tell you which of those you actually want to focus on. If
Yeah.
again, if sales is your number one goal. But again, if your goal is to just help people and you just want to write a book, then whatever you are the most passionate about will be the best option.
Yeah. That's so true. And also, when you said you don't have to be an expert, that reminded me of a video I watched, because in a way, writing a book is like sometimes like creating a video
Mhm.
on YouTube.
It is. Yeah.
You're giving people information on something that they're needing an answer to. And
Right.
when we moved into this house, it had a dishwasher in the kitchen, and not long ago it broke. And we looked on YouTube to see if we could find a way to repair it, because we'd done that before with the washing machine or the tumble
Mhm.
dryer, and now it was the dishwasher's turn. And I stumbled across a video of this guy who had the same dishwasher that we had, and the video was all about how to repair it when the water isn't draining, which is what happened to mine. The video was about an hour long, and it consisted mainly of him. He was a complete novice. I don't even think he knew how to switch on the dishwasher. It was like it was an alien to him. But he did a very thorough job of uh, inspecting everything and taking things apart, and this pipe, and blow through this and clean this and do that. And I was following it intently, only at the end to find out that he didn't manage to fix it. So your book could be like that. It could be just your experience of trying to find a solution to something and not even finding it. But the video was so funny, I don't regret watching it,
Right.
because it actually made me feel like, well, I'm not the only one that doesn't find solutions sometimes. So I mean, I think what I'm trying to say by that is, don't be afraid to not give a solution, but your experience of it counts as well.
Right.
How you experience that problem and what you learned from not being able to solve it. That's good for
Right.
some people as well.
Yeah. And then in your book description, you would basically, state that,
Yes.
and just like, join me on my journey,
Yeah.
to figuring out if I can fix this or whatever.
Yeah.
And, so that way you don't want to, in your book description, you don't want to make them think that they're going to get the
They're going to get the
solution,
solution. Yeah.
because then you'll get negative reviews.
You
But
can get away with that on YouTube, but not in books.
Right.
I was
Right.
just
Right.
saying that.
Yeah, you'll just get, on YouTube, you just get a thumb down. But yeah, and you brought up a really good point. I mean, creating YouTube videos is very similar to creating a nonfiction books, and even the structure.
Yes.
You go from point A to point B, and we lay out whether we have a bulleted script,
Yeah.
a completely written out script, or if we just going off the top of our head. There is a structure to it, so it's very similar to creating a nonfiction book. But not everybody wants a YouTube channel, you
Yeah.
know. But you still have something to share. And again, it could be maybe it's educational, as far as like actually school wise, how to, there's so many things. I tell you, when my kids were younger, they did this, what they call new math. I didn't know math could change. Um, I, you know, math was one of my strongest suits, and so I didn't know math could change. But apparently, what I knew was old math. Now, it was old,
Okay.
it was ancient. Um, but then they've got new math, and I'll tell you, I would have loved to be able to read a book on what new math was,
Yeah.
because my kids would come home and they'd show me what they're learning, and I'm like, okay, but it the end. I mean, math is still math, right? Like
Mm.
2 plus 2 is still 4, right? That didn't change.
Yeah.
And so it's like, a lot of times they were showing them like more steps to get to where it was, to get to the end point.
Yeah.
And, I would have loved something, to explain to me why this is better, explain
Yeah.
to me just what it was,
Yeah.
because obviously as a parent, you want to be able to help your kids in school, but especially apparently when it comes to, math, things change. And so, we're going by what we remember, what we were taught, what we
Yeah.
use maybe daily, and they have to do certain steps, because
Yeah.
what they had was, I remember very vividly with my youngest son, is when they showed they had to show their work, and when they showed it, they had to show that they were using the new math.
Mm.
And it was hard for me to help him, because I didn't understand not only what they wanted, but
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
you know and and so, I mean, I'm all for giving people more tools and more options on how to do things, and let them decide which works best for them. But
Mm.
again, it was really hard for me as a parent to to help him with math. And math was always one of my strongest suits. And it was
Mm.
very difficult for me to help him with his math, because I didn't understand it. Like, I could figure out that problem, no
Mm.
problem, with no issue at all, doing it the way I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
But doing it this way in particular was very difficult for me. And
Yeah.
so that right there, just something as simple as what, like I said, what you do daily, if you're running into issues like that,
Mm.
a nonfiction book, if you finally figured it out, or maybe you're a teacher and, you're teaching something that not everybody's understanding.
Mm.
Again, a book like that can be super helpful, but you don't have to be a teacher to come up with something
Yeah.
like that. You can just be a parent who's dealing with it. Again, you
Absolutely.
don't have to be a professional. You just have to know more than somebody else out there. As long as somebody is going to get value from your book, that's all you need. And again, like in the case of that YouTube video you talked about, the value may not be in knowledge. The value may be in, the comedic journey you went on.
Yeah. And knowing that I wasn't the only stupid one.
Yeah.
So that couldn't fix the dishwasher. It's just, I think it's absolutely what you said. It's getting value. So make sure that you're offering value, but also offering your perspective and connecting with the person reading. That video connected with me because I felt like, wow, I've done exactly the same things and it's still not working. And I'm the same. I connected with that person on the
Mhm.
video, and the feeling of connection is quite valuable in itself as well. That's another good thing because
Right.
it doesn't always have to get a positive end result. It could just be the journey, the
Right.
experience of it. So
Right.
so for me it was a big revelation when I wrote my first nonfiction book. Well, my only nonfiction book. I haven't written any since. So because I found the whole process so much easier than I had imagined. In
Yeah.
my head, it was this unattainable, complicated, difficult thing to do. And because I had the experience in low content, it then became much easier to break down the different steps. And I feel now that it is something that a lot of people can achieve. Um, and it's really possible. And if anybody has any doubts about, first of all, how they're going to do it, there are lots of YouTube videos showing you how to do it. And if they've got doubts on whether they have the ability to do it, then you could just create a structure and get maybe an editor or a ghostwriter or someone to do it for you, and
Right.
then go over it or put your own interpretation on it. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't know what you think of that, but for people who maybe think I'm not a good writer, that necessarily shouldn't stop you either, because there are ways
Right.
to do that,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get around that problem.
Yeah. You can create basically an outline,
Yeah,
and give the amount of information in there so that way a ghostwriter can write,
yeah,
a and make it sound factual, make
mhm,
it true. So you have to give them enough information, and again, when you go back and self edit it,
mm,
then you can tweak what isn't accurate,
mm,
and you don't have to create something completely from scratch.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's a very excellent point. And and yeah, as you were talking about getting that connection. And one thing that as whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, as a human being, we want connection. Like that's what that's ingrained in us. So even if you don't necessarily like to be out in public or whatever, getting that connection in writing is make sometimes it's the best way to do it, because
mm,
you're hearing it in your own head,
mm,
so you're reading the words but you're hearing it yourself. And there's so many possibilities of connecting to people, and have people that may be needing to read not just how to do this, but reading it from you, from your
yeah,
perspective, from your experience.
mm,
And so yeah, I would absolutely suggest thinking about what you could write about. And
yeah,
again, if you don't have ideas, or you think you have an idea but you don't think it's a good idea, maybe you're questioning it, feel free to reach out to us.
yeah,
If you're listening on the podcast, on in the description is our email. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, feel free to leave a comment, and we'll take a look, and we'll let our honest thoughts. The truth is there are very few things that I think would not make a good nonfiction book. It's just a matter of, it may be, more competitive depending on what it is. But again, as long as you're not trying to have something that you're not very familiar with, and then you're trying to write an advanced version of it, or even intermediate, if you're writing it for beginners, you don't really have to know a lot about it.
mm,
Again, I'm not saying to create something, just to create it, and you really have no knowledge of it, but you want to get a book out there, because again, you might make sales that way, but you're also going to get, negative reviews that way. So that those sales will be few and far between. But you want to make sure that you do the research that you may need to do, especially if it's something that's like health related, or whether it's medical, or like exercise and things like that. You definitely want to be careful
mm,
and make sure that you have disclaimers in there and things like that. But that's getting into the weeds. What we want to talk about today is mainly just getting it started. You know
yeah,
and just reassure everybody that if you ever wanted to create a book, and maybe you're not a good writer, or you really don't want to write a children's book, you don't want to write a picture book, because I will tell you, um, for me, I've written over 40 fiction books, and my nonfiction books were the easiest to write.
mm,
They were easiest to write, and actually, with the exception of like puzzle books and things like that, the low content books, the fastest to go from idea to published book than even the children's books, because children's books you got to deal with illustrations and things like
yes,
that, and you know, but the nonfiction books, because it's something I'm familiar with, I'm able to just record it on my phone, and then
mm,
have it transcribed, or I'm able to just sit down and write it out, and maybe the notes on my phone
yeah,
section, and then kind of compile it together. And again, you can have something as simple as just 10 items, 10 things that you want people to know about it, 10 steps on how to do something, 10 questions you get asked, whatever. So again, it doesn't have to be super lengthy.
yeah. And if you think about it, even things like when you're having a conversation with a friend and they ask you, what do you think of so and so? You can write your book like an answer to a friend, and I
Yeah.
think that makes it more relatable, even because if you explain it, whatever your topic is, to somebody else, and you talk to them like they're a friend of yours, I think that makes it easier for most people to be able to relate. And this whole relating thing is, is the reason why memes go viral,
Right.
because people identify with that. When I see something funny, a funny meme, I sometimes say, oh, that's just so me. That's like me.
Right.
And that is that moment that makes your book relatable to people when they see themselves in that situation or having that problem. That becomes them. And then when you're writing about the solution or about your experience, they can definitely learn something from that. So you don't have to be, like you said, an expert. You
Hmm.
just have to know a little bit. And even if you're not an expert, you can research it. But I would say write something that you do know something about and have some kind of experience, because I've
Right.
seen people saying they've written a self-help book on, I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was something where I could tell they hadn't really experienced that, because it was just an idea they had. They researched it and then they wrote the book. And I don't think that is a brilliant idea, because even though the book might be okay, there was no personality in it. There was no
Hmm.
from their perspective in it.
Right.
So that can be a really good way to sell your nonfiction book, because once it has that relatability, people will then recommend it to other people as
Right.
well. They know a friend, oh, look, I read this book and that's what happened to me. And and they might say, well, oh yeah, I need to read that. So that's how it grows and becomes successful. If someone reads your book and they're not really touched by it, they're not really related, they don't find they've got a connection to it, then
Hmm.
they buy the ones and that's it. But you want people to buy again or to recommend it to their friends, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
So
And if you want to give value, then you want it to be informative enough, but also, like you said, I don't want to say entertaining, because I don't want people to think that they have to make it funny or anything
yeah,
like that. But I think connection is the best way to put it.
yeah,
If you have it very sterile, then chances are, regardless of how helpful it is, people probably aren't going to finish it, because you just get bored. But if you have your personality in there, or you, and again, it doesn't have to be funny. It doesn't have to be, off the wall like this stuff that I write. But, you know, if it's something that as they're reading it, they can say, yep, yep, I've been there. I know that. Something that they can relate to, that's what keeps them reading.
yeah,
And that, again, like you said, that's what's going to get them to one, give you the, 4s and 5-star reviews, also to give that word of mouth. And, and that's how you can get not only more customers, but also repeat customers, because Amazon has this little button called follow, just like any other social media platform. And so the next time you put out a book, they will get an email from Amazon saying, hey, so and so just published another book. And
yeah,
so that's a great way to get repeat customers. So
exactly.
again, I cannot stress enough that I truly believe that everybody has the ability and the knowledge to write a good nonfiction book. You may not feel comfortable writing yourself, like you suggested, great suggestions about getting a ghostwriter or whatever. I would say, if you're going to hire a ghostwriter, make sure that they're familiar with writing nonfiction, because writing nonfiction and writing fiction are
That's
different.
a good
Um,
tip. Mhm.
but yeah, I think that everybody has the knowledge to write a nonfiction book, and I really think that um that whatever your topics may be, you have a unique take on things
Yeah,
that there's an audience for. You know, how big the audience is, again, that's going to come down to niche research, but as far as the ability to write it and having the knowledge to do it, I don't think there's really any limitations, except for the limitations you set on yourself.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And like you said, put your personality in it, because otherwise you're writing an instruction leaflet rather than
Yeah, you
than
don't want a
a
textbook.
yeah, you don't want that. You want it to have its own personality. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I can think of. I'm trying to think of something that could stop somebody from doing it, but I can't really think of anything that would be so huge that you can't do it. There's always a way around it, and like I said, the only thing that I can possibly think of is if you really feel you're not a good writer, and
Right.
there's a solution for that as well. So yeah, I would
I would
say
say,
try it.
yeah, I would say the only thing I would say the biggest thing that would probably stop somebody from doing it is fear.
Yes.
I think that's really just the fear of the unknown, fear of
Yes.
what would happen. I put all this time into it, and what if nobody buys it? What if nobody cares? And
Yeah.
then my argument to that is very simple. But what if they do?
Mm.
What if they would? I mean, the number of times I've on my YouTube channel, I've thought about quitting doing the YouTube videos,
Mm.
over the years. And then I get a comment that says how much I helped them, some people actually say the words changed my life,
Yes.
and if I had stopped, if I hadn't done that video, whatever it was that helped them,
Mm.
if I hadn't done that, then they would not have been helped,
Mm.
and so I would say whatever your fear is, just
Yeah.
know that the biggest, the scariest part is not doing it, is what you're doing to yourself. It's the not knowing.
Absolutely.
How do you solve that? By doing it.
Yep.
Then then you won't, then you're not afraid anymore.
Yeah.
And then again, you've got nothing to lose. I mean, like I said, maybe some money if get a cover designer or whatever, but other than that, you really don't have anything to lose except for a little bit of time. And either way, guess what? You've now learned something else. You've written a nonfiction book. That's another topic you could write a book about. You know what I mean? you know
Exactly. Yeah.
and so, how to write a nonfiction book and fail,
Yeah.
whatever. And so even through, and we've talked about this in so many episodes, but even through our failures, we learn.
Mm.
But the only way we can't learn is if we don't do anything,
Yeah.
you know?
It's
And so that's, I mean, that would, like I said, I think that's the biggest hurdle anybody can have that could stop them from creating a nonfiction book is just, you know, letting the fear, freeze, lock you up and just not doing anything.
exactly. And when people say, well, what if nobody buys it? And I always say, well, if you don't write it, nobody will buy it.
Right. How
You
many, how
can't
many
sell
people are buying it
something.
now?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And what if I fail? Well, do you know what? The only way I ever learn is through failure. I've never
Right.
learned anything by everything going smoothly. That doesn't
Right.
really teach me anything. So it's getting rid of that fear, because there is nothing to be afraid of, really.
Right.
And the more you do it, the more you get used to that, and it's actually quite liberating once you've done it and you were able to do it. The next one will be so much easier because you've already done it. So you don't have to prove anything new. You can do it. So
Mhm.
definitely give it a try. I would say that it was easier than I thought it was going to be, and I don't want to be flippant about it because it is a big achievement, but it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. So
Yeah.
I would do it again, definitely.
Yeah.
I wish
Absolutely.
I'd done it
Absolutely. And
earlier. Yeah.
yeah. And if you do decide to publish a nonfiction book, let us know. Let us know let us know the title, and
Yes.
we'll check it out. Because the other thing is, one argument that people make is there's so many books about this topic, but I mean, there are many times that I've bought multiple books, especially in ebook format, on the same topic.
Yes.
Just like with YouTube, I'll go to multiple YouTube channels to see this, whatever this one topic is, to get other people's perspectives. And
Yeah.
so just because there's other books out there, again, you're bringing your own experience to it. And so, you know, someone might want to buy this one that's got 1,000 reviews on it, but they still
Mm.
might buy yours too,
Mhm.
because yours is most recent. You just published it. So yours,
Yeah.
might have more information. And so they'll check that one out as well.
Yeah.
And
And
so
when
again, I wouldn't limit yourself. It
no.
really comes down to, I really think it's the limiting, ideas that people are putting on themselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think I just bought a book called Don't Believe Everything You Think. I think
Yeah,
that makes total sense
yeah,
because yeah, we believe things that we think and they're not true. So if you think you can't do it, that's not true. You can. Yeah.
yeah. And like I said, worst case is And I don't think there's any such thing as a failure. The worst case is you publish it and nobody buys it, and you've still
Yeah,
learned how to publish a book,
yeah.
and you've learned something from it, whether
Even
it's you've learned how to create a
yeah.
nonfiction book, you've learned maybe what not to do or whatever, uh, but again, it all comes down to doing it.
And if nothing else, you can say you're a published author,
Yeah,
and that's
there you go.
something.
That's something that many people cannot say, and a lot of people
Yeah,
want to say.
yeah.
I'm surprised with how many people want to publish a book
Mm,
and have got it on their bucket list.
yeah.
And again, they, getting back to what you said early on, they had these thoughts where you have to have an agent, you have to, have one of the big five publishing houses come to reach you. None of that's true. None of that's true anymore. You know,
But the thing
self-publishing has
is,
changed so much.
yeah, but the thing is, most people don't know where to start,
Mhm.
and that is maybe something we can give advice on. If you are creating low content books, that was the thing that got me started, and it's an easy entry point. And I don't know what tips you have for someone who wants to start. What would you suggest that they do?
Well, I mean, when you first start, when you want to write a book, and I
Mm,
know we have a whole episode on starting a self-publishing business, but if when you first want to write a book, it really comes down to, specifically for nonfiction, just coming up with the ideas. Just coming up with, like I said, the top 10 or 20 things you want to talk about, whatever it is. And I mean, that's your first step. You don't have to worry about what platform am I going to publish on. Doesn't matter. You don't have a book to publish. You know, it's
that's true.
and so many times people put the cart before the horse. Um, and it's like, no, like, get the book written, get the rough draft done, and then you can figure out, because I mean, up until you decide you're going to publish, it doesn't matter what platform you want to do. Now, I would say if you're going to pick a platform, KDP is always the easiest one to start with. It's the most intuitive. It's there's only, three tabs to go through, and there's videos on so many different channels on how to do it. Plus, right on KDP, they've got so much information and they'll walk you through it, step by step, how to do it. I think they call it KDP Jumpstart.
Yes.
Um, and so, I mean, it'll walk you right through it. But again, none of that's important at this point. You have to get the book written. And
Mm,
so the first step would be just to write down 10 or 20 things, that either questions you get frequently about that topic, or 10 or 20 things that you think people should know about it. And then from there, you would take each of those things, and each of those are your chapters. And then you would just write down, you know, break it down into, what about this topic? What about this question do I want to talk about? And then those are your different paragraphs for the chapter.
that's right. I mean, I was looking at it from, you made an excellent point there by saying, write your book first, because otherwise the rest doesn't even
Right.
matter. But I was thinking of it from the perspective of people who don't even know what Amazon KDP is. All they know about books is that when they go into a bookstore, there are the books. How do I get my book there, my physical book, into a bookstore? That's what most people think of when they
Mhm.
think of writing a book. And I think if anybody wants to do that, maybe the best way to find out is to go on YouTube and look up self-publishing a non-fiction book, for example, and there should be lots of videos on how you
Yeah.
would go about that, and the fact that you can upload them to places like Amazon KDP, and they will not know that name maybe, but
Right.
you slowly get familiar with all these different platforms. There's Ingram Spark, there's Barnes and Noble, there is BookVolt, there are so many different ways you can get your book out there. And I think that would be the first port of call, just to look up on YouTube how you self-publish a book, because unless you self-publish, it's a completely different story, and I don't know
Yeah.
anything about that. You know more than me
Yeah.
about traditional publishing, but
Yeah.
it's definitely possible to self-publish your book.
It is absolutely. I mean, I've done both. I've done self-publishing. I've done traditionally publishing.
Mm,
I prefer self-publishing person for multiple reasons. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I would say your first step would be to write your outline, and then write the book. And then after that, but if you do want to learn more about the self-publishing journey, I would say, like you said, on YouTube, there's plenty of different things. I personally would suggest going to a YouTube channel called The Home Boss, or Keith Wheeler Books.
Definitely Keith Wheeler books, because Keith
those would
Wheeler
be my
books,
two.
yeah, that was my go-to channel actually. One of my go-to channels was Keith Wheeler books, and if I hadn't found that channel, I probably wouldn't be here. So you can see that there's a lot to learn from a channel called Keith Wheeler books. So I definitely
Yeah,
recommend that.
it's funny. I actually looked yesterday, and I have like 370 something videos. Um, but yeah. So, but again, I don't want to overwhelm people by having you do a bunch of different things. I would say if you're interested in learning more about self-publishing, then obviously you can feel free to check out either one of those channels, or there's hundreds of other channels out there that are amazing as well. Again, one thing that I would suggest doing is making sure that you look and see how recently they posted their last video, and this goes for any
Yes.
topic whatsoever,
Yes.
because there's especially in self-publishing, there's a lot of things that change, and so you want to make sure that you're following somebody who is still in the game and they're still doing it.
Mm.
Because like I said, it's changed a lot over the 7, almost 8 years I've been doing this. And so I definitely would suggest, if you're going to check out a YouTube channel for anything, whether it's self-publishing or something else, make sure that you look and see how frequently, when the last time they did a video and how frequently they put out videos. But again, not to overwhelm people, I really would say your first bet is, if you just want to write a nonfiction book and you want to get started, start off by writing that list.
Yeah.
Just very simple. And then, like I said, each one is its own step. You write your questions, those are your chapters. Then you write down within each chapter what's the answer to that question.
Mm.
And then, so you've got your literal outline for your book. Maybe you do an intro at the beginning. Other than that, you've literally got it all
Yeah.
already outlined. And then you just either sit down and write it, or if you don't feel comfortable writing, you can, look into getting a ghostwriter or whatever.
Excellent advice. I think that really sums it all up nicely, I think. And it's definitely doable. It's something that
Absolutely.
if we can do it, then it's not too difficult.
No. And I think you'll be surprised at how enjoyable it is. And
Very.
and especially if it's something that you're knowledgeable about,
Yeah.
you'll be surprised at how quickly you can do it, you know?
Mm.
And again, with the knowledge that we've covered in this episode, that it doesn't have to be a certain length of pages. Like, I don't worry about that. It's all about good quality content. And so you don't have to have, 150 pages or even 50 pages or even 20 pages. If you can give them, the content that is needed to answer the questions, or, achieve whatever needs to be achieved. If you can do that in 5 pages, great. It doesn't matter, as long as you're giving good quality content. And
Yeah.
so again, all those, I hope, if nothing else, that you take from this episode is two things. One is that absolutely you can create a nonfiction book.
Mm.
And two is that, and this is the general, but all of those misconceptions that you had, all of those limitations as far as like page count, I don't know enough, I can't think of anything, whatever, all of those are just, that it's rubbish, that it's, none of it's true. It's all something that you can absolutely do, and you don't have any of those limits.
Yeah.
Don't let fear be the reason why you don't do something.
Absolutely. And the one thing that Keith and I definitely agree on is that the biggest problem you're going to have when you start writing your nonfiction book is knowing when to stop. Because I
Yeah.
think that was one of the things that
Yeah.
that really got us. It's, the book was getting bigger and bigger, and
Yeah.
it's knowing when to stop. You don't have to cram everything into your book, but the tendency is to do that. You get
Right.
ideas and you want to write about them. Yeah.
Especially when it's something you're passionate about and knowledgeable
Exactly.
about. It's very
Exactly.
easy to make that 150
Yeah.
page book, which
Yes.
let's be honest, most people are not looking for that in a nonfiction book.
No.
Most people are not looking for, 100 pages,
Yeah.
But again, what does that do? No, that just gave you book two, right?
Exactly.
And so when I said, 10 to 20 questions or whatever, maybe this book only has 10 in it.
Yeah.
The other 10 you save for the second book or whatever. Yeah. So I really think that the biggest hindrance, the biggest wall that people are going to run into is, like I said, that fear, or all the misconceptions that they had. And
Yeah.
so I hope that, and I know this has been a longer episode, I hope everybody has stayed long enough to get that from it. that you absolutely can do it. And again, fear is, I think, it's the biggest thing that's just in general going to stop us from achieving anything we want in life. That the fear is the biggest thing that's going to stop us. And I don't know anybody who has taken a leap of faith or taken fear. Fear is a good thing. It's okay. It's just don't let it control you. Don't,
Yeah.
And so I don't know anybody who has taken a chance at writing a book or whatever and regretted it. Because again, you've learned something. Even if
Yeah.
you've published one book and that's not for you. You don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Then that's fine. Not everybody does. Not everybody, eats, sleeps, and drinks it like we do, and that's fine. But you don't know until you try.
That's true. Very good. Very true with words, really. Yeah.
Well, this has been another great mastermind area. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leave us a review and let us know what you thought. Until next week, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Colby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.